There's a place in America where the sun barely matters, where silence is so thick, you can hear your own heartbeat, where some of the most dangerous people on earth live in boxes smaller than your bathroom, and where 1 hour of freedom feels like winning the lottery. This isn't a movie. This isn't fiction. This is real. And it's happening right now, hidden in the mountains of Colorado. Welcome to the most secure prison on the planet. If you're ready to discover what really happens inside America's most secretive prison, hit that subscribe button right now. Drop a comment below telling me if you'd survive even one day in this place. Because what you're about to learn will change how you see everything. The official name is ADX Florence, but the people who know about it call it something else. The Alcatraz of the Rockies. The clean version of hell. Some guards who work there won't even tell their families what goes on inside. It sits in the small town of Florence, Colorado. Population: about 4,000 people. Nice mountain views, quiet streets, normal America. But drive a few miles outside town, and you'll see it. A massive concrete fortress that looks like it fell from another planet. No windows facing outside, just walls, cameras everywhere, and silence. From the outside, it looks empty, dead. But inside those walls, 300 souls exist in a world you can't imagine. Here's what makes ADX Florence different from every other prison you've ever heard about. The people here aren't just criminals. They're the criminals other criminals are afraid of. This is where America sends the people who are too dangerous for dangerous prisons. Think about that for a second. Regular maximum security prisons have murderers, gang leaders, violent offenders. Scary places, right? But even those prisons have inmates who cause so much chaos, hurt so many guards, planned so many escapes, that the whole system gave up. They needed a new solution, a final solution. That solution is ADX Florence. It opened in 1994, and since then, not a single person has escaped. Not one. In over 30 years, there are maximum security prisons that have had escape attempts, riots, murders inside. ADX Florence? Nothing. Zero. Complete control. You want to know why? Let me paint you a picture. Imagine waking up in a concrete box. The walls are thick. So thick that when you scream, nobody hears you. Not even the person in the cell next to yours. Your bed is a concrete slab with a thin mattress. Your desk is concrete. Your stool is concrete. Everything is bolted down. Nothing moves except you. The cell is 7 feet wide and 12 feet long. Do me a favor right now. Look around the room you're in. Find a space that's 7 by 12 feet. Stand in it. That's your bedroom, your bathroom, your kitchen, your living room, your office, and your gym. Forever. There's one window, but it's not really a window. It's a thin slit, 4 inches wide, pointing at the sky. You can't see the ground. You can't see the mountains. You can't see another human being. Just a little slice of sky. That's your only connection to the outside world. The door is solid steel. There's a slot in it where food comes through 3 times a day. You never see the person delivering it. Just a tray sliding into your life, and then sliding back out. You might be thinking, okay, but what about going outside? What about getting exercise? What about talking to people? Here's where the title of this video makes sense. 1 cell, 1 hour outside. That's it. 23 hours a day, you're in that box. Alone. No cellmate. No conversation. No human touch. Just you and the concrete and the silence. For 1 hour, if you follow the rules, you get to leave. But you're not going to a normal prison yard. You're not playing basketball or lifting weights with other inmates. No, you go to another box. This one is outside, but it's barely different. It's called a recreation cage. Concrete floor, concrete walls, 20 feet by 20 feet. There's a metal grating above your head instead of a ceiling, so you can see the sky. Real sky this time, not just a slice. And you're still alone. No other inmates, no conversation, just you, walking in circles, doing push-ups, talking to yourself. For 1 hour, then back to the cell. This happens 7 days a week, every single day, for years. Some men have lived this way for decades. Now, you might be wondering, Who are these people? What did they do to deserve this? That's the mystery that makes ADX Florence so fascinating, because the government doesn't really talk about who's inside. They keep it quiet, secret. But over the years, information has leaked out. Court documents, news reports, lawyers talking, and the names that have emerged are absolutely chilling. I'm not going to tell you all of them yet. That would ruin the suspense. But let me give you hints, puzzle pieces. You can put them together yourself. There's a man in ADX Florence who bombed a building and killed 168 people. Men, women, children, babies. He showed no remorse. He called the children collateral damage. His execution was the first federal execution in nearly 40 years. Wait, if he was executed, why am I mentioning him? Because he spent years at ADX Florence before his death. And during those years, he was kept in complete isolation. Too dangerous to be around anyone. There's another man who planned an attack that killed nearly 3,000 people. The whole world knows his organization's name. He's serving life sentences, stacked so many times that even his great-great-grandchildren wouldn't see him get out. He'll die in that concrete box. There's a man who used to run a drug empire so powerful, he had submarines. Actual submarines to transport drugs. He escaped from maximum security prisons twice in his home country using tunnels and motorcycles. When he finally got caught and sent to America, they knew exactly where he had to go, somewhere he could never, ever escape from. There are spies, men who sold America's secrets to enemy countries, men who betrayed their own nation for money, the kind of betrayal that gets people killed. There are gang leaders, not street gang leaders. We're talking about men who ran criminal organizations from inside prison, men who ordered murders while locked up in other facilities, men who were so powerful, they controlled entire prison wings until the system said, enough. There are terrorists, bombers, hijackers, men who wanted to kill as many innocent people as possible to make a point. And here's something that will make your skin crawl. There are men in ADX Florence who committed their worst crimes while already in prison. Guards killed, inmates murdered, escape attempts that almost worked. These aren't people who made one terrible mistake. These are people who kept making choices that proved they couldn't exist around other humans without causing destruction. But here's the question that keeps experts up at night. What does this kind of isolation do to a human mind? Scientists have studied solitary confinement for decades. The results are disturbing. When you take away human contact, when you remove all mental stimulation, when you lock someone in a tiny space with nothing but their own thoughts, something breaks. Some inmates at ADX Florence have been found hitting their heads against walls, over and over, not because they're trying to escape, because the silence is so loud. They need to feel something, anything. Some talk to themselves, full conversations, arguments, debates. They create imaginary friends just to have someone to talk to. Some exercise obsessively, 20 hours of push-ups, sit-ups, running in place. Because if they stop moving, if they sit still, the walls start closing in. Memory problems develop when every day is exactly the same. When there's no variation, no stimulation, the brain starts to forget. Inmates have reported forgetting their children's names, forgetting what their wife looks like, forgetting their own past. There are documented cases of inmates who develop serious mental illness at ADX Florence. Hallucinations, paranoia, complete breaks from reality. Some tried to hurt themselves, some succeeded. And here's the really dark part. Some of the men sent to ADX Florence were already mentally ill before they arrived. The isolation just made it worse. This created a legal problem, a huge one, because the Eighth Amendment of the Constitution protects people from cruel and unusual punishment, and lawyers started arguing that locking someone in a box for 23 hours a day, for years or decades, might qualify as exactly that. Lawsuits were filed. Families of inmates came forward with stories. Psychiatrists testified. The pressure built. In 2016, something changed. The Bureau of Prisons admitted that maybe, just maybe, they had gone too far with some inmates. They settled a lawsuit and agreed to move some mentally ill prisoners out of ADX Florence. But the facility is still running, still operating the same way for most inmates. Still keeping men in boxes for 23 hours a day. Because here's the thing nobody can quite answer. What else do you do with them? If you have a prisoner who killed a guard in another prison, where do you send him? If you have someone who keeps escaping, who keeps hurting people, who can't be controlled by normal prison rules, what's the solution? ADX Florence is America's answer to that question. It's not a pretty answer, it's not a comfortable answer, but it's the answer we have. The facility costs taxpayers about $60,000 per inmate per year. That's triple the cost of a regular maximum security prison, but the Bureau of Prisons says it's worth it. Because these 300 men, if they were in regular prisons, would cause chaos, violence, death. So they stay in the boxes, day after day, year after year, some for the rest of their lives. There's a schedule at ADX Florence. It never changes. Breakfast comes at the same time every day, lunch at the same time, dinner at the same time, lights dim at the same time, the 1 hour outside happens at the same time. Consistency, routine, control, that's the philosophy. Inmates get mail, but it's screened. They can write letters, but someone reads them first. They can make phone calls, but the calls are monitored and limited. 15 minutes per month, that's all. Visitors? Extremely rare. Most inmates get no visits at all. The families can't afford to travel to rural Colorado multiple times a year. And even when they do come, the visits happen through thick glass. No touching, no hugging. Just talking through a phone while looking at each other through a barrier. Some inmates haven't felt human touch in over a decade. The guards at ADX Florence have a difficult job. They're not dealing with normal prisoners. They're dealing with people who have nothing left to lose. People who have already proven they'll hurt others without hesitation. So the guards are trained differently. They're taught to never be alone with an inmate. They're taught to watch for the smallest signs of trouble. They're taught that kindness can be mistaken for weakness, and weakness can get you killed. Movement through the facility is carefully choreographed. When an inmate needs to leave his cell for medical appointments or legal meetings, it's a production. Multiple guards, handcuffs, ankle chains, slow, controlled movement through corridors specifically designed so the inmate never sees another inmate. The architects who designed ADX Florence thought of everything. The angles of the walls, the placement of the cameras, the thickness of the concrete, the frequency of the metal detectors. Everything was calculated to prevent escape, prevent violence, prevent communication between inmates. It worked, maybe too well. Because what they created is something that has never existed before in human history, a prison where isolation is so complete, so total, that it becomes a form of punishment all by itself. The concrete boxes, the silence, the 1 hour outside. This is the reality for 300 men right now, as you watch this video, and we're only scratching the surface of what really happens inside those walls. The year was 2005. A man arrived at ADX Florence in chains. His name was known around the world. He had bombed trains in Spain, killing 191 people and injuring over 1,800. When he got to his cell, he looked around at the concrete walls and said something chilling to the guards. "I've been preparing for this my whole life." What did he mean by that? Some people are broken by ADX Florence, but others seem almost built for it. And that's one of the strangest mysteries about this place. How some human minds adapt to conditions that would destroy most people. Let me tell you about the daily mental battle that happens inside these cells. When you're alone for 23 hours a day, your mind becomes your worst enemy. There's no TV to distract you. There's no internet. There's no conversation. Just you and your thoughts. And for many people, their thoughts are the darkest place they can be. Imagine thinking about the crime you committed. Every detail, every victim, every consequence. But you can't run from it. You can't distract yourself. It's there, waiting for you every morning when you wake up. Every night when you try to sleep. Some inmates at ADX Florence have created elaborate mental routines just to survive. One man reportedly does math problems in his head for hours. Complex calculations. He builds entire buildings in his imagination, calculating every measurement, every angle. It keeps his mind sharp. Another inmate writes poetry, thousands of poems. He memorizes them because he doesn't always have paper. His mind has become a library of verses about loneliness, regret, and the sky he can barely see. But not everyone adapts. Some minds simply break. There was an inmate who started eating parts of his own body. I'm not going to describe it in detail because it's too disturbing. But it happened multiple times. The medical staff had to intervene repeatedly. Another man flooded his cell over and over, dozens of times. Not to escape, not to protest, just because watching the water move was the only change he could create in his environment. Something different, something that wasn't the same concrete walls doing the same nothing. The psychological studies on long-term solitary confinement are terrifying. Brain scans show actual physical changes. The parts of the brain that handle social interaction start to shrink. Memory centers show reduced activity. Some researchers compare it to brain damage. Dr. Craig Haney, a psychologist who has studied solitary confinement for decades, testified in court about what he found. Inmates at ADX Florence showed symptoms similar to torture victims: anxiety, depression, hallucinations, massive difficulty with basic thinking tasks. One former inmate described it like this: your mind starts eating itself. But here's where it gets complicated. Because the people at ADX Florence aren't there by accident. They're there because they've proven to be extremely dangerous. So the question becomes, is this punishment too cruel, or is it the only way to protect society from people who can't stop hurting others? There's a man in ADX Florence right now who tried to bring down an airplane with a bomb hidden in his shoe. He failed. The passengers and crew stopped him, but he tried. He wanted to kill everyone on board, hundreds of innocent people. Where do you put someone like that? How do you make sure they never get another chance? There's another man who killed a prison guard with a homemade weapon while serving time for murder. He was already in maximum security, already locked up, and he still found a way to take a life. So they sent him somewhere even more secure. The logic is simple. If you can't be around other people without hurting them, then you don't get to be around other people. If this story is keeping you on the edge of your seat, make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss what happens next. And drop a comment telling me, is this justice or is it torture? I want to hear what you think. Now let me tell you about the most famous inmates to ever walk through ADX Florence's doors, because their stories reveal just how extreme this place really is. Remember when I mentioned a man with submarines? Let me be specific now. Joaquín El Chapo Guzmán, the drug lord who became a legend. He ran the Sinaloa cartel, one of the most powerful criminal organizations on earth. He escaped from Mexican prisons twice, once through a tunnel that was over a mile long, complete with lighting, ventilation, and a motorcycle on rails. When he was finally caught and sent to the United States, the trial was massive news, and when he was convicted, there was only one place in America secure enough to hold him: ADX Florence. He arrived in 2019. The man who had escaped 2 maximum security prisons was now in a place where escape is impossible. The concrete box, the 23 hours, the 1 hour outside, alone. Reports say he's kept in even stricter isolation than most inmates. He can't communicate with other prisoners. His mail is heavily monitored. His phone calls are almost non-existent. The man who once controlled billions of dollars in drug money now controls nothing, not even the temperature of his cell. Then there's Theodore Kaczynski. You might know him as the Unabomber. For nearly 20 years, he sent bombs through the mail, killing 3 people and injuring 23 others. He lived alone in a tiny cabin in Montana, writing a manifesto about technology and society. When he was finally caught in 1996, he pleaded guilty to avoid the death penalty, life in prison without parole. And that prison was ADX Florence. He spent years in that concrete cell, still writing, still thinking. The isolation that would break most people was, in a strange way, similar to the isolation he had chosen for himself in Montana. Until he died in 2023, he was one of the longest residents of ADX Florence. There's Ramzi Youssef, In 1993, he organized the first World Trade Center bombing, a truck bomb in the parking garage that killed 6 people and injured over 1,000. His goal was to make one tower fall into the other, killing tens of thousands. It didn't work, but he tried. He's been at ADX Florence for decades. Complete isolation, no contact with other terrorists, no way to spread his ideology, just him and the concrete and the sky through a thin slit. Zacarias Moussaoua, the only person convicted in American court for the September 11th attacks. He knew about the plot. He trained to be a pilot. He was arrested before the attacks happened, but he didn't tell authorities what was coming. He could have stopped it. He chose not to. Life in prison. ADX Florence. He'll die there. And here's something that shows just how secretive this place is. There are inmates at ADX Florence whose names we don't even know. Spies. Intelligence assets. People connected to classified operations. The government won't confirm who they are or why they're there. Think about that. In America, a country built on transparency and rights, there are people locked in boxes whose identities are secret. But the most disturbing stories aren't about the famous inmates. They're about what happened to people who maybe shouldn't have been there at all. In 2012, a lawsuit revealed something shocking. There were inmates with serious mental illness being held in the same conditions as terrorists and murderers. Men who were schizophrenic, men who heard voices, men who couldn't understand where they were or why. One man had been diagnosed with mental illness before he even arrived at ADX Florence. But he was sent there anyway because he had acted violently in another prison. The isolation made his conditions so much worse that he completely lost touch with reality. Another inmate tried to commit suicide multiple times. Each time, he was saved and put back in the same cell. Same isolation, same concrete box, same 23 hours alone. The lawsuit argued that putting mentally ill people in extreme isolation was cruel and unusual punishment. That it wasn't just ineffective, it was harmful. That it made sick people sicker. The Bureau of Prisons eventually settled. They agreed to transfer some mentally ill inmates to facilities with better mental health treatment. But they didn't admit wrongdoing. And ADX Florence is still operating the same way for everyone else. Here's what makes this even more complicated. Some inmates arrive at ADX Florence mentally healthy, but the isolation creates mental illness. So even if you screen people before they arrive, you're still creating the very problem you're trying to avoid. It's a cycle that nobody knows how to break. The guards see it. They watch people deteriorate over months and years. Some guards have spoken anonymously about the psychological toll it takes on them too. You're not just locking people up. You're watching human beings slowly come apart. But the security at ADX Florence remains the priority. Above everything else. Above comfort. Above rehabilitation. Above mental health. The mission is simple. Keep these people contained. And it works. The statistics are undeniable. 0 escapes. Very few incidents of violence. Complete control. There's a small program at ADX Florence that most people don't know about. It's called the Step Down Program. If you follow the rules perfectly, if you cause 0 problems, if you prove over years that you can behave, you might get moved to a slightly less restrictive unit. In this unit, you get a few more hours outside your cell. You might get to see other inmates, though still with heavy restrictions. You might get slightly better privileges. It's designed to give people hope. A carrot on a stick. Behave perfectly for years. And just maybe, life gets slightly less horrible. Some inmates work toward it. They follow every rule. They count the days. They dream about 2 hours outside instead of 1. About seeing another human face. But most will never make it. The requirements are so strict, the timeline so long, that many inmates give up before they even start. And here's the heartbreaking part. Even if you do make it through the step-down program, you're still in prison for life. You're not going home. You're just going to a slightly bigger box. Organizations around the world have condemned ADX Florence. Amnesty International called it cruel and inhumane. The United Nations has said that solitary confinement beyond 15 days constitutes torture. At ADX Florence, the average stay is measured in years, not days. But American courts have mostly upheld the facility. Judges have ruled that for certain extremely dangerous people, this level of security is necessary, that public safety outweighs the suffering of inmates. The debate continues. Lawyers argue, activists protest, families cry, politicians debate, and inside those concrete walls, 300 men wake up every morning to the same ceiling, the same walls, the same silence. One cell, 1 hour outside, every single day. Some will be there for the rest of their lives. They'll grow old in those boxes. Their hair will turn gray. Their bodies will weaken. And one day, they'll die, still surrounded by concrete. Before you go, I need you to do something. Comment below and tell me, could you survive even 1 week at ADX Florence? Really think about it. Then hit subscribe because the stories we're uncovering are just beginning. There's a saying among people who study the American prison system: we can judge a society by how it treats its worst members. ADX Florence is how America treats its worst. A concrete fortress in the Colorado mountains. A place where time moves differently, where silence is a weapon, where isolation is the punishment. It's not the biggest prison, it's not the oldest, but it might be the most extreme place of human confinement on Earth. 300 men, 7 by 12-foot cells, 23 hours of isolation, 1 hour of sky. This is ADX Florence. This is the Alcatraz of the Rockies. This is where America sends the people it fears the most. And now, you know their secret.